whatever it is they're supposed to find. So,
Dogs are always on a variable schedule of reinforcement.
yeah.
And for two factors. And these two factors are consistent in every application.
Can you explain that? I'm not sure that everyone understands.
So variable means that they never know when it's going to occur. So if you think about a wilderness search, they never know how long they're going to have to search before they find a victim. So they're on a variable duration or a variable interval. All right, so they don't know the interval of time that it's going to take to find that person. So that's a variable schedule. And they don't know how many times they're going to have to find a person. They don't know if it's multiple victims, it's one victim, or it could be a blank based on your training if you've been training blanks. Okay, so those two factors right there, they are always on a variable schedule of reinforcement. If I'm working a narcotics dog in the airport, some flights they're completely clean, there's nothing on that flight. And I would say the majority of flights that come in are pretty clean from narcotics. You know, but all of a sudden that 15th flight that comes in, that international flight that comes in on that day, there may be 5 bags, you know, from 3 different people, because what they'll do is they'll send one person through, everybody, he gets caught, and then 5 other bags get through, you know, because they're focusing on this guy. So they're always on a variable schedule, and that actually increases behavior. So if, and again, I go back to Bob Bailey, he will tell you, and he hit the nail right on the head. You've done hundreds, if not thousands, of runaway sessions and all these sessions in your training. One missed reward will not break your dog. If it does, we've got a serious training problem. That means that there was no value to begin with. All right, and so I guess the caveat this then would be, you have trained 100, if not thousands, of very rewarding exercises. Does that make sense? So that one missed opportunity, I wouldn't sweat it a bit. I wouldn't even give it a second thought.
Well, that too, does that sort of come in to where you're doing blanks? You know, they don't get that high value reward, they get a lower value. I mean, that would help with those days that they don't get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For blanks, I think we struggle with that. What is the best way to do like a negative to negate that? I think we struggle with that a lot in our training. But we want to try to do it because they're obviously not going to find, if we go on a search, more likely to not find anything than to find the person. But do we have the handler know that it's a negative? Do we not? How do we progress through working on negatives, I guess?
So it depends on where the handler and the dog is at.
Okay, yeah.
If they're a very competent team and they're getting ready to challenge certification, they need to be working blind. If they're just starting to dip their toes into the negative or the blank search areas, they need to know. So they can look for those body language indicators and really learn how to read their dog when nothing is there. The other aspect of that, and I know this is going to be controversial, I reward blanks. And a lot of people don't because they feel like the dog didn't find anything, so why should it get a reward? And I look at it from a pure, it's called signal detection theory, and it's used in electrical engineering. You know, signal is there or it's not. All right, when the switch is on, the signal is current. It flows continuously. When the signal is off, there's nothing there. Either one of those in behavior theory with animals is a choice. So if the odor is there, what should the dog do? Alert. All right, so what do you do when the dog alerts? All right, that's your expectation, right? If odor is there, the dog alerts, that's your expectation, that's criteria. So if the odor is not there, what do you expect the dog to do? What's the criteria? The dog should not alert, right? Is that a choice? Could the dog try and false respond and try and milk you for a reward? Right, if the dog chooses correctly, in my way of thinking, that's a rewardable event. And so to ease that frustration and prevent that dog from getting frustrated, like, I'm not getting anything, so I'm just gonna go ahead and sit and see if I can get her to give me a reward. At the end of that exercise, when I know that I've cleared that area and that dog has done a really good job and not giving me any indication, on my way back to the vehicle, good girl, Dad, good girl. I might give her something secondary, I might give her a little bit, you know, but I'm letting her know I'm acknowledging, yes, that was a correct decision. I rewarded choice. Like when I had 2 killer whales that would come up and they would incessantly just fight with each other. You know, because with Winnie, she was such, I'm sorry, for lack of a better term, such a bitch, because I want my fish, and I'm the only one that gets fish because I'm the biggest, most dominant female in this pool. And then I would bring Kayla up next to her, and I'd have them both under control. So what I would have to do is, thank you, Winnie, for coming and being under control. Hold. Kayla, here's your food. And then I would have to go back and reinforce Winnie for her choice not to turn and go after Kayla. Thank you for choosing not to go after the other whale and fight with that other whale. Does that make sense? It's all about rewarding the choice. And so when you think about blanks, a blank is a choice if they don't respond. That is a rewardable event. Sorry, that's a long, sorry, I didn't mean to digress.
No,
That's fine, because we had a dog on our team that the handler felt like, because she was set up for a negative, okay, and that she wasn't aware of it, she feels like that set her dog back so many steps. And there's more to it, trust me, there's more to it, but you can't get that out of her head. That she feels like that is what set her up to fail, on her dog to fail, and be where he's at today. But since then, we have not worked any kind of negatives, just because we don't want to possibly fail other dogs. You know what I'm saying?
No, I think once you get to a certain point, to be quite honest, if you think about the ratio of all of your searches that you've ever done in your life with your dog or with any of your dogs, what's your ratio between nothing being there and something being there? Live or dead? How many blank searches are you gonna go on, and how many
You're
positive
gonna have
searches?
more blank searches
Right.
than you are.
So if I go back and I look at that, we actually did that. We went back and looked at our search history, and we used that to kind of tailor our training. Once our dogs hit our certification, we would then train for another 6 months, reducing our threshold, ramping up the persistence and the intensity and the adversity they would face in the environment. Once we knew that they were rock solid in any environment that I could put them in, we knew that 80% of our searches were going to be blank. And so what do you think our percentages throughout the week were? 80%. So the majority of our training throughout the week was blanks. All right, and so you would think, okay, if you're doing 80% blanks, what's happening to the motivation of that dog? All right, so if you run 30 sessions a week and you're doing 80% of those as blank, ideally you would expect that the motivation would drop, because over time that's called extinction. Any behavior that goes unreinforced will eventually extinguish itself. All right, and so you might start to see that odor recognition or that final response start to taper off. So what we would do is, once I'm done with a blank, I may play with the dog, put the dog back in the truck, but then over 50 yards that way, I've got 5 odor sources put out, and I'll go do a speed drill real quick, where I'm just working on the mechanics of the final response. So now I may have 80% of my sessions